The best twists don't surprise you. They reframe everything you thought you knew. Welcome to Book Launch by Libby. I'm Joe, and I'm so happy you're here. Today, I want to break down how Twist works with three of the best in the business. Joining me today are Lisa Gardner, Joe Piazza, and Clare Mackintosh. Thank you all for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm fangirling over here. I love these ladies so much. And just, woo.
This is so much fun. Thank you. And what a great mix.
It's going to be a great discussion.
I cannot wait. I am so excited to have you all here together. For anyone who is just listening, I want to take a moment and go around the room. If you can all just introduce yourselves and your current released title. That way they can connect voice with name. Oh gosh, I'm going to do alphabet by first name. Claire, I'm coming to you.
Hi, I'm Clare Mackintosh. I'm a British crime writer, if that's not obvious from my accent. I've just released a standalone big twist thriller called It's Not What You Think. And coming very soon, or possibly out now, is The Butler, which is a mystery set in the south of France.
Perfect. Now I'm testing myself on the alphabet. Joe, I'm coming to you.
And I think that you got it right.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. I should know this. I have a child in kindergarten right now. So if I don't know the ABCs, there is something wrong.
And you're in the thick of it.
And I'm in the thick of it. I know, exactly. So hi, I'm Joe Piazza. My latest book was Everyone is Lying to You, a twisty, turny, trad wife murder mystery that came out last summer. And my soon-to-be released, or maybe it's out now, I don't know, The Parisian Heist, which is an all-female heist at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, and the untold story of Joe Van Gogh.
Incredible. And Lisa, how about you?
Oh my gosh, that sounds so much fun.
Right.
So I'm Lisa Gardner. My current release is Kiss Her Goodbye, which actually has some international twists, some riddles, and a 4-year-old that knows the key to everything. And it was a fun book to write because I wrote the riddle without actually knowing the answer. So sometimes the twists and surprises are for the author themselves along the way.
Oh my gosh. How often does that happen to you that you're just like, I like where this is going, but I don't know where it's going?
Well, I write by the seat of my pants. We call it pantsing, so I rarely know. But it was weird because in Kiss Her Goodbye, I just had this thing in my head. Now we'll see if I can get it right off the top of my head. But what is a lock that has no key for a key that has no lock? And I loved it so much, but I honestly had no idea. And really, the day before my deadline, thank heavens, I got an answer. That was stressful. I do recommend that.
right in time, like skin of your teeth. You're like, ooh, figured it out. Here you go. Here's the manuscript.
I honestly, do you know, it stresses me out so much when I hear writers say that they just figure it out as they go along. And I could see Joe nodding along going, yeah, that's how I write too. I plan everything out. I don't know if it's the ex-cop in me, but everything has to be plotted out, all the twists and turns. Otherwise, I can't start writing.
So it's a very methodical process for you. Do you have lots of notebooks and journals and things that you work through? Or is it more like you have the mental timeline in place?
No, I have big whiteboards, post-it notes, notebooks, spreadsheets, the works. I see it a little bit like planning a journey. So maybe, possibly, Lisa and Joe can just get in the car and think, oh, I'm heading to Chicago. Whereas I have to write down every road, every turnoff, and it may well be that I take a diversion because there's a road closure, or I think, you know what, I want to stop now instead of in an hour. But I have to have that route map first.
I love that analogy, actually, because I will tell you, I am a person who will just get in the car and start driving and be like, oh my gosh, look, there's a sign for a wolf sanctuary. That looks amazing. Let's go there. Yeah, I'm also a pantser, and I didn't know the word pantser until a couple of years ago. I was doing a book talk with Elle Cosimano, and she's like, I'm a pantser, and here's what that is. And I was like, that meant something totally different in junior high, y'all. But yeah, I'm a full-on pantser, and I actually get kind of hives from what Claire is saying because I could not sit down and outline everything and create those connections for me. And it's so different for everyone, right? But for me, it's kind of like, I can't figure out where these characters are going until we've been on a few dates already. I'm like, all right, like we have to get to know each other, and I get to know the characters literally just by spending time with them on the page. So I get my butt in the seat. I write 1,500 words a day. And like, I'm usually about 20,000 words in before I'm like, oh, okay. Now I feel good about, doing something crazy here because we know each other a little bit better. It's more comfortable. And I actually love that Lisa said that because Lisa, I just admire your writing and your twists so freaking much. And it gives me so much hope because I start books all the time and I'm like, I know where we're starting and I kind of know where we're ending, but I do not know how we are getting there. And the twists end up coming to me too. So it feels so good to hear you say that.
It's funny because in my real life, I'm about as type A as you could get. I'm never getting in a car and randomly driving anywhere. I agree with Claire. For drives in the car, you need a map. But for the writing process, for whatever reason, when I've tried to outline it, because what, Claire, I feel like you probably are the saner of the three of us in the room, it makes sense to know where you're going. But I can't get those answers like in the beginning. Like I'm still like, okay, but like in one day, you know all of that because now I'm really in awe. I mean, it takes me months sometimes to figure out the right plot twist.
Yeah, but don't get me wrong. This is not me just planning a novel in like a day or a few days. My plan is my first draft, and that might take 3 or 4 months. The difference, like maybe, I don't know, maybe a different or a better analogy might be the architect rather than the builder. That nobody is turning around to an architect and saying, well, that's not a very creative job that you do. And, that must be so boring, just sort of, structuring everything. I need to do that architect's plan. And for me, that's a really creative process. So the only bit I'm not doing, so I am going on that journey with the characters and I'm not telling them what to do. I'm just not writing the dialogue. I'm not writing the description. I'm seeing it in my head and I am writing down what's happening. Because it means that when I come to a point where I think, oh, there's a big reveal there, then I can go back in my plan and I can drop in, right, we need to be seeding something there and we need to be, giving that little clue. So it's it's like a very, very skeletal first draft, I suppose.
Yeah, I see that. I think sometimes I wonder if I write novels the way that I do because I was also a journalist for so long. And, I was like a daily tabloid journalist. And so I'm out in the field, I'm interviewing people and then transcribing that and turning it into story gold. And I'm wondering if, my process of sitting down and like doing the dialogue in this very crappy, rough first draft is almost like me interviewing my characters, right? And like getting to know them and reporting them out in order to get to the point where I feel good enough to write an actually halfway decent second draft.
Well, do you ever work backwards? So I have a book that comes out this August called, let's see if I can remember that one. Oh, You'll Be Sorry. That's it. See, can't keep track of my own titles anymore. I knew from the very beginning in that book, an entire family of 6 has disappeared in the middle of a dark and stormy night 30 years ago. So I do know at some point I'm going to have to account to what happened to the family. But that's by the end of the novel. You got plenty of time, right? We got a whole year of writing before you have to get to knowing the answer. For me, it was more as I got closer and closer to the end of, well, the things that can't be because otherwise in 30 years they would have found him, right? But it also became to me as I got closer and closer to the end, what does the reader need? Like, what would be kind of satisfying, but not like you faked it or like, and how to kind of work backwards now that I have all of these parameters, but one of them being also what would be right for the reader. I've never quite come out of problem solving that way, but it was the only way I could do it.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
that's really, I also love that of like putting yourself in the reader's shoes and figuring out what do they need? Like what needs to be delivered here? I worked backwards with Sicilian Inheritance because I knew that we had a woman who was murdered in 1914. We're trying to solve that mystery. But the twist was, and cover your ears, y'all, if you haven't read or listened to the book yet. But the twist was that, she wasn't dead. She faked her own death. And so I knew what we were working backwards from. And then I had to do exactly what you had to do, Lisa, right? Like I had to figure out, okay, what does the reader know and what is satisfying to find out at what time? And how do we actually get us to this point? And I think that is for me, I find that really fun too, once I do, because I think my outlines are my first draft, right? Like I'm not outlining it bulleting, but I'm writing that crappy first draft. And but then to work backwards was really interesting. And I do think, like you, it gave me a better perspective on how to make this as satisfying as possible for the reader.
I wonder as well if it depends slightly on what type of book it is. You know, that I often feel like my process changes all the time. I don't have a set process for writing a book because the story and the characters dictate so much of it. And if I want to create a situation whereby there are many, many suspects, so the book that is about to come out or might have just come out, The Butler, the only thing I knew about this when I started is that it would be a closed cast, that we've got so Baxter is a private
Classic.
butler. He's off on he's looking after this group of people in a villa in the south of France. And so I know that someone's going to die and that everybody is a suspect. And that's the only sort of area where I won't know what happens, because then I didn't know who did it. And that was quite fun, because my only job then was to make sure that I just set it up so that all of them had a motive and all of them could have done it. And then Baxter gets to, work out who actually did it and why. Whereas with my normal thrillers, when they often start with a big twist, then I'm more likely to pull it backwards and think, well, okay, that's the trick. That's the twist I want to pull off for the reader. How am I actually going to make that plausible?
I love those closed cast mysteries. I've done a couple. And because, again, I'm more organic and I'm trying to learn the characters as I go along, at a certain point, I'm even like double dog daring them. It's like, some of you are going to live. Some of you are going to die. Some of you are going to be evil. Make your case for yourself now, because the end is coming.
And make
I
it
love
so
them.
make it so I have a tough time choosing which one of you is what.
Yeah, I love those too. And I've not written one of these books, but I love them to read. I love it where you aren't sure who the victim is yet. Have either of you two written one of those? I'm trying to think if I've. So Lucy Foley does it brilliantly. Often
I haven't done it yet.
You have a body at the start and you're in two timelines, and you're just not sure who copped for it.
Yeah, no, I have not done victim at the start. I've had a lot of peril at the start, but like you find out pretty quickly who is in peril. So no, but Lucy Foley does do that brilliantly. I mean, she's just so good at it. And now I'm like, can I make that work for the next one? Yes, I can, for the next one that I'm going to start.
Just watch all three of us come out now with the mysterious victim.
Yeah. We're actually writing a book together after this episode. So, yeah.
And that's the twist.
Yeah.
Right. The twist is this isn't even an episode. It's just a brainstorming session. We're farming the three of you to make a book at the end. That's such an interesting concept, though, of opening up with a body and spending the book to find out who the body is, to find out what, I think there are so many elements to a good twist. And when you think about a twist that really works, what makes it land emotionally and structurally? Because I think there's two sides to that. Like, we all know that a lot of us are reading for the emotional twist. I think there are 1,000 books we could think of that jump to mind with that. But when it just lands so perfectly for the storytelling, that structure that just makes us go, wow, they really did that. That's the hard one too.
I think we're looking for, or I'm looking for it's almost like a two-stage reaction, and the two elements come really close together. So the first one is, oh my word, I did not see that coming, but it should be followed really quickly by, oh, of course it was. How could I not have seen it? And it's getting that balance and getting them close together, because actually if you have one without the other, it's not going to be as satisfying.
Absolutely.
I always think of the really big twists. If you ever remember those optical illusion things, they look like all dots. And then if you could get your gaze to focus so much, all of a sudden, like this 3D image would become. I feel like those really big twists are like that. It's like all of a sudden you're seeing clearly. So, and it's like your
Yes.
mind kind of goes,
Mhm, mhm,
oh, okay. Oh my goodness. Like I just needed to shift slightly. And now I get
mhm.
it totally what's been going on here. So there is the sense, I think a really good twist has to always be grounded, to Claire's point. You want it to be a surprise, but you don't want to be like, well, I was never going to guess that. Or it was like totally out of left field. It needs to have that kind of subtlety to it as well of, oh, of course, if I had just shifted slightly and looked this way.
You want the reader to have the opportunity to figure it out along, like, with your main
Yes.
character.
Yeah.
Yes. Every time. I like it when readers then flip back and they're like, wait a second. I know exactly where maybe there was a hint at this, and they flip back. But then, making sure that that lines up, because I have read books before where I go back and I'm like, nope, nope. Mm-mm. And I find that to be a really hard part, making sure that all of the Easter eggs and the clues are actually
Yeah.
working. When I've done dual timelines, and I get asked about this a lot, or dual perspectives, I'll read each one as its own book and see if it stands alone, read the other one as its own book, see if it stands alone. And only then do I read them on top of each other to see if everything is lining up and you're getting what you need from each piece of it at the right time. And I've done that one since The Slain Inheritance. I did it on Everyone Is Lying to You and Parisian Heist. And that just really helps me kind of step in the shoes of the reader, right?
Mhm.
To be like, oh, okay, this is what they know at this time. And this is the emotional gut punch that I want to be giving them.
Right. Because you want them to be flipping back because they go, that was so good. And oh
That
my
was so
gosh,
good. I want to
here's
see
where
how they did that.
right,
Hmm.
here is where I should have seen it coming. Or, like, oh,
Hmm.
I found the clues, not flipping back to be like, did I miss how this could have
Yeah,
happened?
yeah. Like, did I miss like a whole book in here?
But I'm also so fascinated by that idea of reading each component separately.
Mm.
And I love hearing that you're doing that, because I would love to encourage everyone to do that, because that sounds so incredible to be like, do the layers line up? Could either exist on their own? And it takes me back to, like, when you first learn how to use a conjunction, almost like these could be two separate sentences, but they have the power to be together, and that really speaks to me.
But they're actually stronger together. Exactly. But
Right.
also, when you read it on its own, I think you make it so much stronger too, because so many times you're like, oh, this couldn't hold up. And how can I make you feel like a more complete story when I'm reading it alone? Right. And so that's really helped me. Like, that was one of those things. It took me, I don't know, 7 books. And then I finally unlocked it. I'm like, this is like magic. I love it.
I always think of thrillers too as what's at stake, particularly for the
Mm.
characters. So to Claire's point, where in a plot twist, we have two things that happen really quickly at once. One being like, I didn't see that coming. Oh, that makes total sense. But the third to me, because it's almost always leading into that last action sequence, should be like, oh no, but that's also terrible. And what's going to happen next? Like there should be something about that twist that makes the situation somewhat worse, or the characters have even more at stake. Because this is going to be that last kind of whirlwind to push you into the huge dramatic action sequence.
Right. This is our escalation to make us
Yeah.
go, oh, the stakes feel just as real for me, the reader, because now I am also the person in this journey.
Yes, completely. Depending, of course, on where that twist comes. Because although often in a thriller, it is sort of a roundabout the denouement, it's not always. We will all have read lots of books with big midpoint twists. My last book has got a very big twist really quite early on in the story. So although it's got to raise the stakes, you've got to potentially leave yourself room to raise them even higher if we're still quite early on in the story.
And
And I never
Claire,
know
what?
what to call that, because I'm sorry, because someone in
No.
a screenwriting class was talking about it. So maybe Joe, you and Claire are more familiar, where there's like plot turns, and then there's like a grand finale twist. So it's like you have a turn, a twist. I'm not sure I'm that organized in my structure, but kind of like there should be, yes, some very unexpected things, but then the plot twist toward the end is the biggest of them. But again, I'm not sure I'm that structured.
But
Yeah.
so that there's a difference between a reveal and a twist, right? Or a turn and a twist. And so I don't think it's so much about where they fall. I think, a reveal can come anywhere and a twist can come anywhere. But I do hear a lot of people talking about twists when actually what they mean is a reveal. So my definition of this, and this is not a sort of a set in stone, but my definition is that a reveal or a turn is the answer to a question that you've been asking. So it's who is that body in the pool, or, who hid that clue there. But a twist is the answer to a question you didn't even think to ask.
Oh, I like that so much. I'm totally going to steal
Right?
that.
It's good, isn't it? You can steal
future
it.
panels. Claire told me.
I'm also stealing it, Claire. It's
you can
it's
have
just
it
universal
with my
knowledge
blessing.
now.
With my blessing, the Clare Mackintosh
That's
definition. And so, those are those big moments where everything you thought was, it was different. Whereas I think, not every thriller or not every crime book has to have a twist. Every single book, regardless of the genre, has to have a reveal or several reveals, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree with that. And I also love your point of like, right, some crime novels are just there to be procedural. Like, they're delightful, but you're not always looking for that, right, that thriller suspense element, or maybe to the same oomph. Like, you still want the pacing and the ferocity, but it's kind of like you're in the same aisle, but you might have a taste for something different.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but reveals are super, super exciting. We can still get the same page-turning adrenaline.
Exactly.
It's, a twist is just a very specific ingredient that works in some books and doesn't in others.
Absolutely. Claire, I wanted to go back to as well, one of your earlier books, as you mentioned, you had a twist so early on, and you had to be able to keep the pace and be able to build and go from there. How hard was that? And would you do it again?
I just have done it again. So so my debut, I Let You Go, has a really big twist in it. And I didn't, and I've had other books with twists, not all of them, but quite a few with twists. But I thought that really I Let You Go was sort of the big one for me. But actually, It's Not What You Think, which just came out, has got the first of three big twists. Comes maybe 10-15% into the book. And so that was about playing with point of view, so that we are jumping between timelines and we're jumping between perspectives, so that every section, and there are 5-6 sections in this book, everything you thought was the truth actually is not. And what I try and do is create what I like to call bookish whiplash, where the reader is just, constantly looking in a different direction.
Now I'm dying to read this book, Claire. I want all the whiplash. Give it to me. Bring it on.
But also, what an idea to just be like, nope, we're going on a roller coaster in pages. Like, let's hit it.
But that roller coaster analogy, I use this when I talk to people about writing, because when I'm planning my pacing, I think about it as a roller coaster, because what's exciting when you're on a roller coaster is not being up here all the time, is it? And it's not being down here. It's the way in which you get between one state to the other. And it's the difference in the spacing between being up here and being down here. So it's not, rhythmic. So it's a great analogy to bring up, Joe.
Well,
Now,
thank
Joe,
you.
you were talking about having just done a heist book. I would think like the pacing, the structure, twists, and that would be very different than your other novels. Or how does that feel different?
They are. And it felt really different. I mean, there's a mystery inherent in it. So like that part is the same, but then we have kind of the procedural planning of the heist, which was very different. And so I did so much research, which was actually amazing, and some of my most fun research that I've ever done.
Did you do a heist?
So, all right, guys, this is the right place. This is the right place to just reveal that I'm behind the Louvre heist, okay? It was me. It was all just publicity and marketing for the Parisian heist. Come and get me now. Actually, I went, the Louvre heist did happen the day that we launched my book cover for Parisian Heist in the fall. And I was like, thank you, heist gods, for that. But so I interviewed art security experts, heist experts, including Anthony Amore, who is the head of security at the Isabella Gardner Museum, which has like one of the longest outstanding unsolved heist cases in the world. And so I was like, all right, here's my heist. Does this work? And he's like, absolutely not. And he's like, most heists are not like Ocean's 11. Most heists are so simple that like your idiot neighbor Bob could pull them off. He's like, it's the getting away with it later on because most people spill the beans and that's how they get caught. And so then I came back with another heist and Anthony was still like, no. And then my third heist was the heist that he was like, yes, this one is actually going to work. So yeah, that one took a ton of research and also then having folks walk me through these museums to actually show me. I'm like, could you show me how I'm going to pull off my heist? And they're like, I guess, sure. They're like, we didn't expect this to be as interactive as you're trying to make it. But it was really great. Look, I'm going to say I could probably pull off a really great heist now. I'm just putting it out there. I would be very good. But yeah, it was a different kind of planning because it is almost a story within a story. Like there's a thriller aspect. There is a mystery to be solved here. And then there's also a heist and its dual timelines. There's a lot going on.
I have to say, I like using professionals. I mean, Claire, you have a professional background. You're a police officer. But I have to say, for a lot of my stuff, I've ended up going to like either the police or I did a book, Love You More, where it's about a police officer's daughter has disappeared and everyone thinks she's done it. And I end up working with the body farm on that.
Wow.
Okay, if you found, how would you try to, hide human remains? And I thought you could burn them. And it turns out, no, they could find that no problem. And it's like, what if I did this? What if I did that? And it took a long time to come up with a scenario, working very closely with them, where I will admit I was very proud of myself. I kind of came and was like, all right, this is now what I'm thinking. And the head of the body farm was like, that is deeply disturbing. But yes, that you could do. That would get away with it. But yes, you kind of need the expert knowledge to make the twist. So like what I need to happen, because it had to be grounded. So I guess this is another one of our twist requirements. It has to be grounded in what it is probable or what can actually happen.
Right. We want reality to play its part in it because you're all writing within the bounds of reality. So it needs to be plausible. Could we talk about research for a second? Of course, it's something that has to be so instrumental to all of your work. How long do you spend researching? How long is the timeline for one of your books? Just in terms of, I know we kind of talked about it in pieces earlier, but the drafting to writing to handing it off to kind of be done, what does that whole package look like? And then we can go a little deeper into what each of you usually focus on for research.
I used to have a formula where I would research for 3 months, draft for 6 months, and then rewrite for 3. More of my research phase is organic now. I think I've become such a big pantser, toward the way through the book, I realized, oh, now I think I'm going in this direction and I need to learn everything about this, or I'll get to a point where trying to explain something. I've never really done a true dual timeline like you're talking about, Joe, but You'll Be Sorry does have to do with a crime that happened 30 years ago. So one of the things that was more technical that I spent a lot of time on is DNA evidence. Like 30 years ago at a scene, what did they know? And I was always told from the beginning, and I've adhered to this, your experts must always use best practices. So the cops weren't stupid 30 years ago, but just this is what we could learn from DNA 30 years ago. So now if reopening it now, well, now what we learn. And as I started to get into the weeds and learn some of that, it's like, oh, well, now I got to learn about this. And now I got to learn about that. So I feel like I researched the entire time I was writing that novel, sometimes on a chapter by chapter basis.
And almost now that like research that is just your process now. Like one book this book has turned into kind of like the new going forward.
It's nice if you can find retired people. So I had a retired cold case detective, a retired ME, a retired DNA. So they were very receptive to texts. It's like, okay, so I'm on page 101. Question of the day is. But professionals, would prefer a little bit more structure.
I'm sure they would.
Yeah, I would say that so, since I'm on a book a year schedule, it's gotten a lot tighter too, right? So I'm definitely researching throughout the process. Like I will have my idea and sit down and just like have my like 0 day where I'm like, all right, you start today. Here we go, girlfriend. Let's see what happens. And then fully pants and do my research along the way. And so I write my messy first draft, like I said, which I think is kind of my outline. Uh, in 3 months. And then I note the places where I really have to do that deep research dive or to visit a place. A lot of my books are very place specific. I really like using place as a character. And so for Sicilian Inheritance, that was actually hard because I was writing during the pandemic. I'd been there a bunch, but not while I was writing the book. So it was a lot of old pictures and I was doing remote interviews. And then I had 2 weeks left before the copy edit was due to go there for 2 weeks. And I was like, you have to eat all of the food in this book to make sure that you have the food details correct.
Good research.
Right. Guys, really,
Essential.
I'm not going to say that I choose my locations based on where I want to go next, but I'm not going to say I don't. And so for Parisian Heist, I actually kicked off the writing in Paris and wandered around the city and followed where my characters went. And then I finished it there too in September. So I do try
Wow.
to then budget in travel time for all of them. But the one that I'm writing right now, where I'm in second draft phase, is called The Last Ride. And it is a murder for hire plot at a fancy dude ranch in Wyoming. So it's kind of like White Lotus meets Yellowstone. And I'm taking the whole family out there. No one will be murdered during this family vacation in June. So it's kind of like write, research, travel, write again, research, travel.
I love the idea of a dude ranch. I mean, what are you? Are you like actually farming dudes? What? Anyway, send me the details.
I will. Yeah.
I have learned that if I do too much research early on, there's a risk that actually the story might change direction in my planning and I'll have wasted a lot of time doing a deep dive on a particular subject. So if it depends where the research falls. If it is research that I need for plot purposes, then I have to stop what I'm doing and I have to, find out whether this is feasible. If it's research that I need to do in order to make a character or a scene feel authentic and, or to add color to a place, that can all wait. And it could wait actually for the second draft if needs be, or even later on. I have an amazing WhatsApp group called Murder, don't we all? And it contains 4 very high-ranking women, former colleagues of mine. I've got an assistant chief constable, a head of forensics, head of undercover surveillance, all these sorts of things. And I basically just fire questions at them. Is this enough acid to dissolve the body, or do I need to go back to the shop? And they will. One of them will pick it up and send me the answer. It is the best contact group I have, and also the WhatsApp call I'm making if I ever get arrested.
What is that narrative component really matters too, because I know when I got to the end of You'll Be Sorry and I finally solved the problem of my family or what I wanted to happen. Well, then, yeah, I'd done all this research on DNA and all the stuff that should happen the first time around. I was like, well, some of that, I was kind of, again, you don't want it. They were stupid the first time around. So now I had to go back to all the DNA people like, okay, this is what I really think happened. Is there any way reasonably we could tweak the forensics and this and that so it still makes sense or it still holds water and it's not the cops are stupid the first time around? And
Right.
it took a bit. I felt like I was trying to bend the space-time continuum a little, but we were able to kind of figure it out. But yeah, it was kind of crazy and efficient because I ended up like having to rewrite the first 100 pages now to take account of all these little variables. So when we got where I finally wanted to go. And those are the moments I wish I was a plotter and I could have seen ahead because it would have been such a nice, more efficient way of doing it. But yeah, I reached the end. Very messy, kind of psychotic, but I was there.
What? And once you're there, you're in the clear, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Claire, I
The new
want
meds
onto
are
this.
great.
Truly.
I want onto this WhatsApp group so freaking bad. I'm just like, oh, like what a gift. What a gift to the universe that you have this. It's amazing. I love it. I write through a lot of plot holes a lot. So especially if I'm kind of in a zone and like in the flow, I'll be like, okay, I don't know how someone would jump out of a plane, but I'm just going to imagine how it would happen. And I'll TK it and come back to it later and fill in that hole, right? Just because I think that there is something about momentum and like getting to a place where you're like, all right, I have to keep going. I'm dying to keep going. But then I think the research can also be this really beautiful distraction too, where you're like, oh, I don't know what's gonna happen next. I guess I have to go to the Louvre.
But also the balancing not getting stuck because you find something fascinating and all of a sudden you're like, well, I want to talk about this thing I learned, but no one's going to care for maybe for 3 sentences, but not for 30 pages.
But not for as much as I'd like to talk about it now that
exactly.
I am an expert in this subject. Exactly.
I call myself the Goldilocks writer. The first time I have to put everything I learned all in, and then that destroys your pacing. So the second time around, I take it all out. And then the third time through the manuscript, I get it just right.
And it works. I think a very important follow-up question to all of this is, are y'all on so many lists? Like, is airport security hell for you?
Oh my God. Joe, I really thought you were about to say, are y'all on so many meds?
No.
Yes, I am. That too.
I mean,
that too.
you
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
yeah, no shame in that game, but no, lists. I can't imagine what your search history is flagged as. That's why you're calling retired experts, right?
Yeah,
I think it would be a real. I do every now and again have a kind of 3 a.m. worry that somebody is going to frame me for a crime, and my search history is not going to exonerate me from that. You know, I have Googled so many different ways of offing people, disposing of body parts, stealing their money. I mean, there just is not a crime that isn't in my search history. So yeah, it is a concern.
Oh my God. So when I was going to wrap up, you'll be sorry, I was writing a scene where they're in a cavern with all these bones. And just for love nor money, could I grasp, what would bones sound like collapsing on top of each other? Is that a rumble? Is that a cracking sound? So I finally, because I was very tired at this point, Googling the sound of dry bones against dry bones, skeletons collapsing. And it's like, I have this in the back of my head. This is definitely putting me on a new watch list. I mean, I don't even know what the category is.
I had to make a bunch of research calls for It's Not What You Think, and I was in a bit of a role, and so I was just kind of ringing people and emailing, and I rang an undertaker, a funeral director, because I was trying to work out if it's possible to buy a body bag as sort of individually, or whether you have to buy them in bulk. And
valid question.
And then my follow-up question was whether they have serial numbers, you know, are they traceable? And this guy I was talking to got more and more kind of concerned. And it was at that point that I realized I'd failed to introduce myself as a crime writer and had just like cold called him like a customer.
That's awesome.
Oh, and you know, I could see myself being that funeral director, just being like, okay, and let me write down some details. What can I tell about this person from this call? And Lisa, I'm just expecting that your algorithm is now going to like introduce you to like a really great goth club because you searched sounds of bones clattering at night kind of thing.
Oh, I want to know, do they track body bags? I'm dying to know now. Are there serial numbers?
Oh yeah, I want to know everything. Can you buy them can you buy one off, or do you have to buy them in bulk?
You can buy them individually. They come in all sizes, including extra, extra, extra large, but they are all traceable back to the manufacturer. So you might want to cut that tag off.
That's smart.
Fascinating. So smart. Huh. We're all like, okay, great. Good to know. Helpful. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone knowing my search history. Like, I have this nascent idea for a book that's a murder that's like loosely set in my very idyllic urban neighborhood in Philadelphia. We have like this massive Halloween celebration that, you know, goes for like a 10-block radius. and someone finds a body the next morning, but no one knows because all the adults were out just having fun. Everyone was in costume, right? And every time I go to write it, I'd be like, someone could commit an actual murder in Fiddler Square then. And then just use my search history and be like, she has literally done all of the research on this. She is clearly the murderer here.
Oh, yeah, it is such a real fear though, where you're just like, no, I implicate myself on the daily for money.
So
For money. I mean, sometimes my husband looks, I'll tell you, and he'll be like, seriously? And I'm like, well, it's in the book. And he's like, that's wrong. It's wrong what you just looked up.
Maybe this would be the ultimate double twist, though. I mean, there's been a couple of books and TV shows where you've got copycat murders based on a best-selling author's crimes, right? So maybe the thing to do is to commit those crimes that you've searched for and written about, because who on earth would do that? Surely someone is, doing a copycat crime. So you've just got to bluff your way through it, Joe.
Right. If you're,
Had some real cases.
right.
There's been 2 real cases in the U.S. of authors who have done away with their spouses, and they've written many. One was a romance author and one was a crime novelist. So,
wow, I had no idea.
I think we got to do that and do Stranger on the Train. So Claire, like, I'll copycat your crime that you're trying to get away with, and then you do Joe, and Joe, you do mine, and let them solve that one.
We told you this was a brainstorming session, and maybe not just for books. Okay.
I love this. I'd like to volunteer for Joe's heist, actually, because I used to live in Paris and I really miss it. And I speak French, so I'll go and do a heist for you.
Fine. Accepted. As long as you get me on that murder WhatsApp.
Okay, deal.
Easy
This is gonna
trade.
be more fun. Yeah. Okay, here's my stupid question. The word heist. I only apply heist to like an art theft. Or is it just another word for theft? Like, I always think of an art heist.
Yeah, well,
Ooh.
bank heist. It's used in banks too. Yeah. So like I think it's any sort of institutional thievery. So like you're robbing a bank or you're robbing an art museum. Like you wouldn't use heist for like someone's house.
Gotcha.
But you would
That's
use
the
it-
distinction.
But like
Yeah,
a
that's the
jewelry
distinction.
store or
A jewelry
Okay.
store. Yeah.
Institution, like it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Do you think readers want to be surprised, or do they want to feel like they saw it coming?
I think they want both. And that's the trickiest part of this. Like, I think they genuinely want to be surprised. And then, like we were talking about earlier, in the hindsight of it, be like, oh, I saw some, like, I was smart. I saw some of this coming, but not the whole thing. I don't think they want the whole shebang.
Yeah. I like it when they get to the answer about half a page before my hero does. I really like that. So they're kind of they're just following in the footsteps, and they get to feel slightly cleverer than my hero, but only for a couple of seconds.
Right. Just mere moments. So it doesn't take away from the work you've done, but it sets everyone up for like a really good high.
If it's all predictable, I think the reader just loses interest. Even if and I think you have to be careful too, because it can't just like seem very predictable and then all of a sudden it's not, because they're already bored. It's like you need enough reveals, you need enough interesting things to continue to go on to let them feel kind of on quicksand. Like, even if I think I know what's going on here, I don't really know what's going on here, so that you can maintain their interest.
Definitely. How would you say you all balance misdirection? Is misdirection something you play with at all?
Well, I'm just misdirected the whole time because I don't know where I'm going. I have no direction, so
It's all misdirection.
After the fact, sometimes in the cleanup, like for the most recent book, they're like, you need to introduce a few more red herrings. Actually, what they had me do is play around with gender. There's sometimes like just be less specific so people can wonder just a little bit more to the last minute. But I can't intentionally do misdirection, I have to say. That's almost more once I finally know what's going on, going backwards and trying to make sure there's a couple other red herrings or things for you to think about.
Got it. Gently built in, but not your focus, Lisa.
Well, see, I'm thinking about misdirection all the time. I'm just constantly thinking about like, what primrose path am I leading you down right now? Because again, like I like to step into the reader's shoes, and this isn't always in the messy first draft, but definitely in the second one. I'm like, Yeah. How can I lead you down a rabbit hole that you didn't expect to go down, but it's not the right rabbit hole?
I also think about misdirection a lot. And my planning document is a table with lots of columns, and those columns tell me what's happening in each chapter and whose point of view it is, and perhaps what the timeline is. It tells me what's happening in that chapter. But then I have a column right at the end that I call the reader's journey, and that is effectively my misdirection column.
Oh,
And so
fun.
I will jot down in there what the reader is thinking, wondering, suspecting, feeling. And it's very much, it's a word or two. It might just be an emotion. It might be more concrete. At this point, the reader thinks X is a good guy and Y is a bad guy.
Mm.
And then several chapters further, that's going to flip. But it just helps me keep track of, it's me sort of, playing God, I suppose, before I've even written a word.
No, that makes so much sense. I think that kind of leads into this thought of, do we like being fooled as readers? And why do you think we like being fooled? Like, yes, we want to reach the conclusion with the main character, but I think at the same time, just as much as we want to solve it, we also want to be like, "Ah, you got me." Like, what does that bring to the table?
I think two things. I think people genuinely love a surprise. We have so few surprises left in life now with so much information at our fingertips, that people do like that feeling, that serendipity of feeling like you were just completely surprised. But I do not think that people like being made a fool of, right? And so I think you have to be very careful to constantly respect the reader and respect their knowledge of things, and like we were saying earlier, give them enough that it all feels really plausible, that you're not completely coming out of left field and they feel like they were on the journey with you. I love what Claire said about the reader's journey column. Yet another thing I'm stealing from Claire. This whole thing was just a masterclass in things that Claire is teaching me about writing books. And so that you're on the journey with them and they feel like they're along with you. And then, oh my gosh, you totally surprised them with this thing. But they do feel like they were capable and that they were a part of this with you at the same time.
The reader in many books, I think, is the ultimate unreliable narrator. So we talk a lot about unreliable narrators in mystery and crime and thriller fiction. And by that, we mean a narrator that is deliberately misleading the reader. But actually, for me, the most exciting and satisfying books to write are the ones where you are just pointing the reader in a certain direction and letting them tell themselves the wrong story, because that's what it boils down to. And that happens because if you're clever as an author, you can encourage a reader to play on their own stereotypes. Sometimes, readers will make assumptions about a character's gender or a character's sexuality or their situation, or the choices that they would make based on assumptions, their values, that sort of thing. And so you just point them in the right direction and you let them believe what they want to believe, and then your work's kind of done for you, and that is a really satisfying process.
Yeah, what you're describing, I mean, that's masterclass. That's like high art there. When you can execute on that as an author, which you have, my hat's off to you. I really do struggle with unreliable narrator books in general, because I feel too many of them, the narrator is just plain lying or lying by omission. That to me does make me feel like I'm being made a fool out of. And then I actually don't like those books. If you can execute at the level you're talking about, that's high art. That's amazing. But I think you have to be careful. I don't think readers do want to be made a fool out of. You can, oh, oops, yeah, okay, you're right. I made an assumption. That was kind of funny. Now I realize my own biases. That's different than that character lied to me. I could never have guessed this ending because I was never told the right information, kind of thing. That's where some of those lines are. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I have been deeply frustrated by some books with unreliable narrators, because effectively they've just chosen not to tell us something that would have, given us that information from the start. So there has to be a really solid reason. If you've got a character who is withholding information, there has to be a really good reason why they're doing that. And it's not enough for it to be for the purposes of suspense.
I love that. I'm just sitting here absorbing away. There's so much to think about. When you are thinking of your twists, whatever stage of the process you're in, how do you balance the way that blends with your plot and your pacing? Because how often are there times where you just go, did I just overshadow my work with this twist? Or is that not a concern you have?
As in, like, sometimes the twist, is there a risk that the twist is bigger than the story, that there's
Yeah.
not? Okay, yeah. So I do think about this a lot. And
Okay.
there are some books that I read where I think, great twist, but if I'd guessed the twist, and sometimes I do, actually there's not enough there.
There's not enough book here to
Right.
get through. Yeah.
Yeah. And some twists, so I quite often my books in my head start with the twist and I have to put them through a bit of a test. And sometimes they're not going to carry a whole book. And in that case, they become something else. They might become a short story, or they become nothing at all because all it is a device. So I do think you have to be quite realistic and make sure that actually the twist is just a part of the story and not the story itself.
Yeah.
I'm a very character-driven writer. I mean, like, really, it's the characters that always come to me first. And to a certain extent, I'm hoping I get that kind of moment of alchemy where the characters are now telling their story and I'm just along for the ride. But I think for me, that means all reveals, plot twists, the black moment, everything. It's tying back to the characters themselves, their own personal internal journey. And that thrillers to me are almost just like this boot camp. I'm using the external pressures of, whatever crime, life on the line, terrible thing that they're going through to reveal moments and help them discover themselves. And I feel like as long as I'm doing that, as long as everything's always tying back to that character and their journey, then it's all going to flow organic and feel real. If you get a moment where the twist is almost too external, like almost, I guess I kind of think of some of the Hollywood movies, which is kind of like a big bang for the sake of like shock and awe, but it has nothing to do with the people involved. Well, then that to me, it might be cool or clever, but it wouldn't be satisfying.
Right. You've spent so much time bringing these characters to life. You want it to feel true to the character that you've just spent a few thousand words describing.
It has a real personal meaning to them, too.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I also write very, very character-driven books, and I really think that the twist, it has to be worthy of them, right? So it has to be worthy of the conversation you've been having the entire book. I have read a lot of twists that are just so completely out of left field. I'm like, you're just doing this for the sake of a twist, right? Or there were some books that I wasn't as invested in the characters, and I just skipped ahead because I'm like, well, I want to know the twist, so just tell me what's going to happen at the end. And yeah, I think twists can feel really cheap sometimes, and it's almost, it can be harder to be using the thriller structure than a lot of other books because the twist really does have to pay off, even though, like Lisa said, we're using this structure to get into these characters, to get into their stories, to start a conversation. And yet we also have to make sure that the twist is really good at the end, because you have to feel satisfied at the end of that story.
That makes so much sense. I know we're almost out of time together, but when you're all writing, when you're introducing characters into the world, when you're posing these crimes, these mysteries, these thrills, what do you hope your audience takes away when they come to the end of one of your books?
When I was growing up reading, because I was in a small town, books for me were a way to walk in someone else's shoes, to travel the world when at that point I didn't know that I'd ever have the opportunity to travel, to meet people that in my small little town, I was never going to meet. So part of being character driven is I want the reader to walk in other people's shoes. And, my current release, Kiss Her Goodbye, that was one of the tougher books I wrote because the woman in question is an Afghan refugee. And the research with Afghan women, the experience of being a refugee and coming to the United States. But I really thought is very powerful for readers. You know, the nuts and bolts of what is it like to be a young mother, a wife out of your culture. You've lost everything, but you're still trying to build a new life. They're just that opportunity to walk in someone else's shoes.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I want my readers to miss my characters, right? Even the ones that we may have killed off. I want these characters to stick with them for a long time. Like the biggest thrill that I get is when I'm at book events, they're like, "What do you think she's doing now?" And I'm like, "Well, let me tell you, because she still lives in my head, so I could tell you exactly what I think that she's doing now." And then I love putting Easter eggs in future books. Like I just added an Easter egg that was totally out of left field from an earlier book, which was really fun. But yeah, I want them to feel like those characters are maybe not friends, because some of my characters are terrible and you don't want to be friends with them, but people that they live with, right? And so afterwards you're still thinking about them. They're still popping up in your subconscious, and that even for the ones that are a little bit deplorable, like you liked spending time enough with these people that you're still wondering about them.
Still want to know what
I
they're
love
up
that.
to. Yeah.
I want my readers to understand, I suppose, that life can turn on a dime. So when I was a police officer, which I was for 12 years before I became a writer, I just saw firsthand how an a life event like a bereavement, a divorce, a redundancy can change a very comfortable life into a very uncomfortable or unsafe life. And when we are in an uncomfortable or an unsafe situation, we make different choices. And so as a writer, I'm often writing about those, what makes good people do bad things, what makes bad people sometimes do good things. So I would love my readers to read my books and think, actually, that really could happen to me. And what would I do in that situation? And also, I'd like them to leave me a 5-star review. But, either of those things.
I want that too. I would like to add that to my.
Same.
It's too late.
Me
It's too
too.
late.
5 stars all around, please. No, that's perfect. Lisa, Claire, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and share your expertise.
It's such
No,
a
thank
pleasure.
you. This has been so lovely. And I just really can't wait for the project that we're all working on together. It's gonna be wonderful. Whatever form it takes. Yeah.
Right, me either. They're going to be clamoring for it. But friends, you can find more about our guests in the episode description. And if you're not already, make sure you're following the show so you never miss an episode. You won't want to miss this Thursday's episode, where I'm joined by Abby from Crime by the Book to share mystery and thriller
Love her.
recommendations.
I love Abby. She's the best.
She's the best.
See, co-signed here by this wonderful group of people. Thank you all so much for joining us, and happy reading. You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonso. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.